I covered this moron's take on the Luigi Mangione and Daniel Penny affairs a couple of days ago. I figured it was just another race baiting rant until I finished taping. That's when I realized, to my horror, that she was an actual lawyer. Well, I went ahead and edited the recording and pushed it out because I had already invested too much time into the project. But I knew that I just had to induct her into the local lawyers gang. Hello out there. I am trying to get through.
With cold, blunt analysis cradled in the warmth of reasoning, it's time for Johnny Walker Dread to straighten you out on a thing or two. Emanating all the way from exciting Las Vegas, Oklahoma, it's time for the Johnny Walker Dread Show.
Okay, so I'm only going to play snippets of her video this time. If you want to see my previous video on her lunacy, see the description below.
Police apprehended Luigi Mangione and found on his person a manifesto, a gun, and other items linking him to the crime in Manhattan. The public response to the murder and subsequent manhunt has been, at least in my corner of the internet, somewhat jubilant.
Yeah, I hope her crowd isn't composed of fellow lawyers. And you'll see why a little bit later, when she's not only going to divulge her complete misunderstanding of the law, but she's even going to call for violence.
So when I say that Jordan Neely and United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, who lived in an affluent suburb here in Minnesota and made $10 million a year, were on polar opposite sides of the social strata, I mean that in pretty much every way imaginable, though they were both criminals. Thompson was convicted of a DWI in 2017 and was under active investigation for insider trading at the time of his death. If we're going to note the troubled histories of the victims, let's at least do so evenly, shall we?
One was someone who had 3 unprovoked assaults on women on his record. The man assaulted a 67-year-old woman as she exited the subway, breaking her nose, fracturing her orbital bone, and causing substantial bruising, swelling, and pain in the back of her head. Neely pleaded guilty to felony assault. Later, he pulled his pants down and exposed himself to a female stranger, hit another woman in the face, and violated a restraining order. As for the other side, the dude had a misdemeanor DUI. So they're both criminals? She can't see the difference between the 2 rap sheets?
Okay, that was weird.
How would you like her defending you in court?
Your Honor, I would like to argue for a reduced sentence for my client, but he had a misdemeanor DUI 7 years ago. So I can't, because he's a criminal, I tells you.
The jury deadlocked on the manslaughter charge, so the judge dismissed it, and on the lesser negligent homicide charge, the jury voted to acquit.
Wait, so the jury did not find Daniel Penny guilty of murder. What's this? He wasn't even charged with murder? Now she's a lawyer, so she's going to be careful with how she describes Penny, right? His killing of Penny, if he was responsible for it, can't be called murder, right? We'll see.
This incident harkened back to a similar incident when in 1984, a white man, Bernard Goetz, shot 4 black youths on a subway car after they allegedly tried to rob him. In that case, race was never explicitly mentioned in court, but Goetz's attorneys were later accused of using covert appeals to racial bias to win their case, calling the men Goetz shot savages, predators, and vultures.
Now we can't even call people predators or vultures anymore?
That's racist!
Of course, Goetz's lawyer called them all kinds of names. You dingbat. Goetz's claim was that they attacked him. His lawyer's job is to make it appear that he was, get this, the good guy. Remember, this is a lawyer talking.
That was local, but not in an entertaining way.
Can you imagine her defending you in a self-defense trial? But the man was a burglar.
Now, wait a minute. We don't want to resort to name-calling.
And yes, it was perfectly appropriate for Kyle Rittenhouse's defense team to want to use the term rioters and looters, and the judge was perfectly appropriate in letting them if they could justify it. Unlike what Clarence Darrow here thinks, assailants are not entitled to the same protections as the accused.
And using 4 large, fit adult black men to reenact the scene between Goetz and the 4 youths for the jury. A New York representative at the time opined that if it had been a black man who shot 4 white youths, the call for the death penalty would have been almost automatic. Clearly, the similarities are apparent. Safety in New York City has been a constant concern, especially since the pandemic, with Mayor Eric Adams posting cop robots in the subway system, increasing police presence, and ordering cops to shoot people over evading the $2.90 fare.
As I mentioned in my other video, she is pushing a bald-faced lie here. But we move on.
Listen, I can empathize with the concern for safety. I'm a woman who can't walk around alone at night in her own city.
Well, that's because of lawyers like you who are soft on crime and want people to be roaming the streets, even if they're convicted felons, if they're black. Oh, if they're a white person, throw them in jail forever.
Minneapolis is also experiencing a homelessness epidemic. I see people having various levels of mental health crises almost every time I board public transportation here, and I hate it. It's uncomfortable. It makes me feel unsafe. It is unpleasant for everyone when a place has crime and poverty and homelessness. I think we can all agree on that one.
You know what? If she's on a subway and she's being attacked, don't help her. Oh, go ahead and help her. Look, don't take this to that level. But think about it. She's saying that, well, I feel a little uncomfortable, a little unsafe. Yeah, wait until somebody actually attacks you. Then we'll get back to you and see if you've changed your opinions.
The larger question then becomes, how do we deal with this? Similarly, I empathize with people cheering the murder of Brian Thompson. The healthcare system in this country is broken. I made a whole episode about it. Insurance providers are a large, very public-facing piece of the very broken puzzle. They are a predatory band-aid over the problem of inaccessible healthcare. And when is vigilantism okay? Is it ever okay? And what does it say about America that it's on the rise? Vigilantism has had many different definitions within political science, but it's best summed up by a 2020 paper by Professor Regina Bateson, who defines it as the extra-legal prevention, investigation, or punishment of offenses. This means that the actions of vigilantes always happen in relation to the law, going beyond what the law is. They're extra legal. They take the legal order and stretch it beyond what it allows.
No, that would be illegal. You dope. If you stretch an act beyond what the law allows, you're committing a crime. The author is using a very poor definition of extra legal that is more suited for civil law. And of course, she can't pick up on that. Within the context of vigilantism, extra-legal means that you are committing acts that lie within the jurisdiction of government, but for which you have no governmental authority to commit. The state can kill a person because executions lie within its authority. A person shooting someone as punishment for a crime is a vigilante because he's engaging in an extra-legal execution. Is vigilantism illegal? Not always. I can take it upon myself to go investigate crimes and track down the criminals. Those functions reside within the authority of the state. However, there might not be any statute that forbids them. So let's take 4 famous cases and investigate them from the viewpoint of vigilantism. Daniel Penny. If his motive was to protect others, that is a function that the average citizen has the authority to perform. If Daniel Penny committed his act to punish Jordan Neely for his behavior, that would be vigilantism, because punishment for crimes is a state function. Luigi Mangione. If Luigi was simply angry at Brian Thompson, then that wouldn't be vigilantism, because getting even with people is not a state function. If he shot Thompson to punish him for his company's health policies, that would be vigilantism. Only the state has the legal authority to punish a company for misdeeds. Kyle Rittenhouse. Kyle was not acting as a vigilante when he helped protect businesses from rioters. Protecting private businesses is not a state function. If you don't believe me, tell the cops that you are leaving for a week and that you would like them to guard your property. They'll laugh at you. If you want to watch over your neighbor's property while he's gone on vacation, you can. That's not vigilantism. By the same token, administering first aid is not vigilantism because private citizens have the authority to help others in medical need. If Kyle had decided to hunt down people he saw committing crimes or question people to identify those who committed the crimes, then that would be vigilantism because he would be assuming the official functions of a state agent, a police officer. He did neither. And keep in mind, such vigilantism would not necessarily be illegal. Now, I could try and explain this to her, but she would probably respond,
But Daniel Penny was a murderer. And so was Kyle.
yes, that is the depth of her legal analysis.
Neely's offense was threatening others, making them feel unsafe, and in many ways, existing in public as a black man experiencing a mental health crisis. The jury may not have had such a hard time finding Penny guilty had he killed a white man, because again, white people are seen as more human and less threatening than black people. In comparison, Brian Thompson's offense was facilitating, condoning, and leading a system that exploits the sick and dying in America. However, it's an oversimplification to say that Daniel Penny's actions and Luigi Mangione's alleged actions are both vigilantism and then leave it at that, or to condemn vigilantism across the board as all the same.
So here, she's going to highlight the fact that Daniel Penny probably didn't act as a vigilante because he was trying to protect others from an imminent threat. But Luigi did, because Luigi apparently shot a man dead to punish him extra legally for his company's healthcare policies, right? Yeah, hold on to that thought.
As Professor Bateson demonstrates, vigilantism takes many forms and varies along a number of different dimensions. She defines 5 key dimensions: vigilantism, that is individual versus collective, nonviolent versus violent, private versus public, spontaneous versus institutionalized, and defensive versus offensive. I would add another key dimension, vigilantism that is motivated by either explicit or implicit hatred towards a marginalized group versus that which is not, because I think that matters greatly in our assessment of the situation.
On the face of it, that chart doesn't indicate that Penny is a vigilante. But we can fix things up with a stitch by adding this ad hoc race crime criterion. You see, Daniel Penny, a white man, was involved in the death of a black man, so he must be a vigilante. That's what she's getting at.
This is less applicable in the cases of Daniel Penny and Luigi Mangione, who committed murder, allegedly. This will not likely become legal despite praise received by both men. However, especially in the case of Jordan Neely's murder, this does open the door for more permissive types of self-defense, because at least according to that jury, there's at least a doubt as to whether Penny was acting in self-defense.
Wait, because the jury expressed doubt that Penny's actions constituted self-defense, this opens the door for more permissive types of self-defense? How does expressing doubt about the accused's self-defense claim open the door for more? Oh, never mind. And by the way, she continually calls Daniel Penny a murderer, or his involvement as a murder, even though he was never convicted. This is a lawyer talking.
So now, anytime someone seems threatening in a subway car in New York, anyone may feel emboldened to take matters into their own hands through lethal force, because it has not only been condoned by this jury, but also by the politicians who are patting Daniel Penny on the back for his heroism.
Juries don't condone. Juries decide whether the prosecution has provided enough evidence to prove their claims beyond reasonable doubt. Yeah, I would expect the average person to make silly claims about what a jury has decided, but she's a lawyer.
I'm crazy. I'm the local one.
Doesn't she know better?
This also provides legal precedent in future court cases for similar self-defense arguments.
She is insane. Where in the Sam Hill did she earn her Juris Doctorate? For crying out loud, the principles of stare decisis are taught in your first law class. Trial courts don't set precedents. Precedence is not established until an appeals court weighs the constitutionality and pertinent case law associated with the trial.
Hey, I'm the most local person in here.
I can't believe it. They're just handing out law degrees now.
Self-defense typically has to meet a threat with equal force and cannot go above and beyond the threat.
Just to be clear, your actions have to be proportionate, not equal, to the threat. This means that you cannot use lethal force if the threat you perceive is clearly non-lethal. There is no requirement that you must meet the threat with equal force. Under certain circumstances, you can shoot an unarmed person. You could even shoot the person with a bazooka.
So if someone is 15 feet away from you unarmed and threatening to take your wallet, and you pull out a machine gun and shoot him 15 times, typically that'll be seen as excessive and not merely self-defense. But I guess if a guy is 15 feet away from you and saying scary words, you can hold him in a chokehold until he's dead. That's the new standard.
Let me see. The person is 15 feet away and you're holding him in a chokehold. How is that even possible?
That's more like, zany or goofy.
Yeah.
It's the wrong kind of loco.
It would seem that something must have happened between the time Penny was 15 feet away from Neely and the chokehold. But will she tell us? Nope. And no, that totally contrived fantasy description of what happened is not the new standard. Again, the jury did not set legal precedents for future self-defense claims. This is just sour grapes over a court case your side didn't win. Your prosecutors failed in their attempt to convict. Could it be that, let's see, the accused is actually innocent?
Public reactions by politicians and those in power make it clear that for many, there is only a certain type of vigilante justice that's allowed.
You mean vigilante justice that involves the shooting of a CEO in the back of the head? Because everything you're telling us is that it should be allowed.
The murder of a CEO, while still a crime committed against a person for the mere fact of belonging to a certain class, a rich CEO of a health insurance company, we could hardly call this a hate crime under the traditional sense of the word. Brian Thompson was the furthest from marginalized a person can be. Luigi Mangione was unequivocally punching up. The same cannot be said for a white ex-Marine holding a homeless black man in the midst of a mental health crisis in a chokehold for much longer than any reasonable person trained in using chokeholds should ever hold a person. That was the definition of punching down.
So vigilantism is justified if the victim is a rich white dude, but unjustified if the victim is a homeless black man. And Luigi was hardly punching up. He came from a wealthy home. So this is why she wanted to insert that systemic racism angle in that previous chart, because she needed that angle to make the race of the victim an important factor in assessing an act as vigilantism. And the wild logic in her stance is why you don't want to include racism in the chart, because the race of the individuals should play no role in deciding whether an act is vigilant.
And Daniel Penny's subsequent assessment of Neely as nothing more than a crackhead indicates that if he wasn't overtly racist, his actions were certainly underpinned by pre-existing racist beliefs about the type of person Neely was.
And I'm pretty sure that Penny called Neely a crackhead because of his behavior, not because he was black. Some white dude in a hoodie who is threatening people on a subway is going to be called a crackhead as well.
And his motivations for this vigilantism fall along the same lines as that of Kyle Rittenhouse and other white men who felt emboldened to act with lethal force against black people or their sympathizers. These are people who feel not only that the state is weak and therefore vigilantism is justified, but that whiteness itself is under threat and therefore extra legal actions are warranted.
And with that, we know we're dealing with a true moron. How in the hell was Kyle emboldened to act against black people or their sympathizers? He was ambushed and chased and acquitted. This is a lawyer who can't understand that Kyle was never convicted of any crime.
This is like watching the British version of The Office. Like, it's funny, but awkward and sad at the same time.
Yes.
And obviously, she knows nothing about the Rittenhouse case, and yet she's going to go off on it. And Kyle, in no way, shape, or form, shot anyone because he felt vigilantism was warranted. He shot people because he was trying to neutralize a threat. At no point did Kyle, while being chased by a violent loon, think to himself,
The government should do something here, but they're not, so I guess it's up to me.
Again, perhaps Daniel Penny didn't have all these thoughts running through his head as he squeezed the life out of Jordan Neely, but the subsequent positive social response, including from elected officials, was praise coming from the same people who are constantly warning that whiteness is under attack from immigrants, from poors, from the gays threatening the traditional family unit. These ideas are not completely separate things happening in separate vacuums. They are part and parcel of a larger agenda to push in favor of fear of the other so as to strengthen the state in the name of preserving the white Christian family unit. And these same elected officials, in the same breath, will condemn Luigi Mangione's actions as abhorrent because he's threatening the class that lines our elected officials' pockets.
or perhaps they're calling Luigi's actions abhorrent because 1, Luigi planned the murder, and 2, Luigi shot a man who was walking away from him. Could that be it? But you see, she can't see that. She belongs to a certain class of people who see politics in everything. An act can't be abhorrent because it was. She has to know the races involved and their income. She has to know if the attacker was punching up or punching down. Again, this is a lawyer talking. If you shoot someone that enters your home and you have her as a lawyer, you'd better not have too nice of a home. Or if you do, you'd better hope that the intruder was a millionaire and white.
Praising a man who killed the very type of person Republicans abhor the most, poor, black, and in need of social services, while condemning a man who killed the very type of person Republicans and frankly politicians generally love, a rich white CEO, is simply furthering a decades-long agenda in this country to vilify certain groups and treat people as more or less valuable depending on their lot in life. Don't let it fool you.
Fooling us is what you're trying to do. She belongs on Rashad Ritchie's Indisputable channel. She would fit right in.
And don't let it distract you from the larger conversation. We are being divided over racial lines and wedge issues, and that only benefits those in power who are now quaking in their boots and feeling fear of the masses for the first time in a century. We have an opportunity to take that and run with it. Don't let Brian Thompson die in vain. Use his death to strike fear into the hearts of all CEOs.
Okay, at this point, she's calling for violence. She's saying that vigilantism has these evil white rich people scared, so pour it on. This is a lawyer who is so stupid she can't see the obvious liabilities of her words.
He's crazy, man.
What if one of her subscribers decides to act on her words and shoot the local grocery store owner? How is YouTube even allowing this to be posted? Keep in mind that anyone that most of those living on the streets who think rich lawyers are to blame for society's ills would probably be punching up if they attacked her. How would she feel about vigilantism then? Vigilantism is great if it's the other guy on the receiving end of a gun. At any rate, Leisha, you are now a loco lawyer.
With this bandana, I welcome you to the game.
Like my video and subscribe to my channel.